Hi, I'm John Maxwell. When the top companies in the world are looking for trainers, speakers, and coaches, there's one name that stands above the rest, and that's Maxwell Leadership. Our certified team members have gotten proven results for companies all over the globe, and our reputation, I'm proud to say, is second to none. Some of our members have risen to the top of their profession, including the one you're going to meet today. I proudly introduce you to my friend Bob Fabian Zinka.
Welcome to the Leadership and Success Podcast with your host, Coach BZ, where we help you lead with purpose and succeed with impact. If you're ready to grow into the kind of leader others want to follow, this podcast is for you. If you're determined to elevate your success and leave a lasting legacy, this podcast is for you. As my mentor, Dr. John C. Maxwell reminds us, everything rises and falls on leadership. Our goal is simple: to inspire you, challenge you, and equip you with insights that can transform the trajectory of your leadership journey. Welcome aboard to another episode of the Leadership and Success Podcast with Coach BZ.
Hi, this is Dr. Lee Baucom. I've been a marriage counselor for over 20 years, and I created this assessment because I understand the pain and the damage that the constant mean, angry, and hurtful fighting and bickering can cause, and because I understand the obstacles that you're up against when you're trying to put an end to the fighting, and because I sincerely do want to help you. It's what I do. It's what I'm really good at, and it's one of those few things in my life that really gives me true satisfaction. That's what I get when I hear that I've helped a couple wipe the slate clean, start fresh, and get back to really enjoying each other. That's truly indescribable. Now, I have a Ph.D. in counseling, and I've authored several books which have helped thousands of people to put an end to the fighting, wiping the slate clean, and truly coming together as a team. I've been featured as a relationship consultant on shows like ABC's 2020 and Dateline NBC, and on national magazines like Newsweek and Men's Health. Now, I'm not telling you this to toot my own horn. No, I'm telling you this to communicate to you that the information that you're getting in this free assessment is coming from a real expert with proven methods and a proven track record of success across thousands of couples over the past 20 years. They are not the untested theories and opinions of an untrained amateur. They are also not the methods traditional counselors use, who typically have a 20% success rate. While the failure rate of traditional marriage counseling is a shockingly high 80% on average, my success rate is almost 90%. That means that 9 out of 10 people who use the approach are able to have a lasting positive impact on their relationship or their marriage. And that means that you can do the same. The secret to my success is in the approach. While traditional marriage counseling focuses on the symptoms of a troubled relationship, talking about how you feel about past hurts and ripping open old wounds and often aggravating the problems in the relationship, my approach focuses instead on eliminating the root cause of the problems. With the root cause gone, the symptoms go away on their own, and that makes room for really transforming the relationship. This approach is not some pie-in-the-sky theory. It has been tried, tested, and retested. It has worked for thousands of couples, and it will work for you too. If you're ready to stop the fighting and bickering using the right approach, first, read your free assessment below to learn what's broken and why, and then click on the button at the bottom of the page to learn how to fix it.
All right, everyone, welcome to a very special edition of the Leadership and Success Podcast. I guess today is going to be our very first marriage counseling podcast. I think the most important relationship in my life is definitely the relationship I have with my wife, Demetria Brown Zinga. So this morning I said I was really grateful, as it is our custom here. We are grateful every time we meet for at least one thing. So this morning it was just for all of the people who have gone before me and who have set an example, trailblazer, who have really allowed me to become who I have become because I do stand on their shoulder. But I'm also especially grateful for my wife, Demetria. So let us know what you are grateful for. Let us know where you are joining us from, what city, what state. And I see Daniel Young, a friend of the show, is coming from Maitland, Florida. Thank you for being here. Let us know what you are grateful for, Daniel. And also, if you have a question for Dr. Baucom, go ahead and type it in the comment, especially if you have a marriage question. So let me see if I can properly introduce our guest today. So today, like I said, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Lee H. Baucom, Ph.D. He is a nationally recognized therapist, author, and coach with over 30 years of experience helping people thrive in their lives, relationships, and leadership role, especially when it comes to marriage. I believe he's America's #1 marriage coach for sure. So he's the creator of the Save the Marriage System, the founder of Thriveology, and host of the Thriveology Podcast, and author of multiple books on responsibility, forgiveness, and meaningful living. Hopefully, we're going to talk about at least a couple of his best-selling books today. So, Dr. Lee's work challenges a common myth in leadership and life, that thriving is about happiness or comfort. Instead, what Dr. Lee Baucom teaches is thriving is rooted in responsibility, emotional discipline, growth, and purpose, especially when life is hard. So, without any further ado, please help me welcome to the Leadership and Success Podcast, Dr. Lee Baucom. Good morning, Dr. Lee. Can you hear me? Oh, Dr. Lee, looks like your camera is not on. Let me give you a moment.
Let's try it now.
Okay, I can hear you, but I don't
All
see
right,
the
perfect.
camera.
You suddenly disappeared, but thank you for the introduction. I was enjoying that, and then it went silent on me. I'm so sorry about that.
No problem. That's one thing that might happen when you have a live show.
We're good.
Yeah, if you make sure under the setting there should be a video or a camera. Okay, very good. Now I can see you. Perfect. All right, welcome to the show, Dr. Lee Baucom. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, BZ.
Fantastic. And is there something you are grateful for today?
Oh gosh, I am grateful for every minute. I'm grateful to be sitting here. I'm in what I call bonus time after I had a crisis years ago. So
Hmm.
I work on gratitude all the time.
Wow, I think I know exactly what you mean. Because when I was a kid, they told me I would never live beyond 17 years old. I'm in my mid 40s now, and every day I am alive is bonus time. It's a day I have to be grateful. So, thank you
Absolutely.
so much for sharing that. Is there maybe something about you that most people may not know?
Yeah. So one of the things that a lot of people don't know is when I was a kid, I was a magician. In fact, my
Really?
late teens, yeah, into college, I was a um, professional magician. I did my last year. I was performing before I went. I think I've had enough. I did 500 shows in 1 year.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you can tell us briefly how you got to become no, Dr. Lee Baucom. I believe you're #1 marriage therapist or coach in America. How did that happen?
So I actually was trained as a therapist, and so I often refer to myself as a recovering therapist. I
Mm,
switched over to coaching really as I was finishing out my PhD. I realized that I wasn't quite fitting the mold, and I wasn't really liking the results I was seeing, as you kind of
mhm.
mentioned, showed in the video of me from many years ago.
Yes.
So I realized that I needed to track to a better way of helping people, and
Mhm,
coaching has been it. But also looking for how we've missed the train on helping marriages. And so
yes.
I spent a number of years going, what's the better way? That's kind of been the hallmark of me of saying, how can we do this efficiently,
Mhm,
effectively, and simply? And let me
mm,
say, simply, not easily. There's a
yes.
difference between those two.
Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, so that's one of the confusing things. I have a book that's about how to save your marriage in 3 simple steps, and everybody says this isn't easy. And my point is, simple is direct, right? If
Yes.
I want to go down the street, I can go curvy ways, and that would
Mhm,
be complicated, or I can go simple, but I still have to I have to walk those steps, right? If
yes.
it's up the hill, I've got to go up the hill.
Mhm.
So significantly, people want an easy answer in today's world. And
Wow.
there are not many things of importance that are easy. There are some things of
Yes.
importance that we can simplify. So back to my
Mhm.
little revelation that I was a nerdy magician when I was young.
Yes.
I would do a trick, and people would try to tell me how I did it, and they came up with
Mm.
the most complex ways of telling me what I was doing. And I'm sitting there
Yeah.
going, it was the most simple little move that I
Yes.
could have done, but they complicated it. And
Hmm.
so I have seen that as a hallmark of what I try to do of simplifying
Yes.
complex ideas into the most direct route. But that doesn't mean the path is easy, it's just
Yes.
direct.
Hmm. Thank you so much. That's a very, very important distinction. Yeah, it's so true. It looks like most people like to overcomplicate things. I don't know why we love to do that. One of my best mentor, General Collins, used to say, a good leader is a great simplifier, because if you can take something complex and simplify it, then you bring clarity and focus. That's really wonderful. So, Dr. Baucom, you've spent over 3 decades now helping people thrive, often in the hardest moment of their lives. What experiences most shaped how you think about leadership, responsibility, and growth?
Yeah, so I was interested early on in what helps people to come back from traumas and from
Hmm.
difficult experiences, and so I did a lot of research in resilience. Now, part of that was because I was a chaplain early in my career. I was a chaplain in a hospital,
Wow, is
and
there anything you haven't done? My goodness.
I've done too many things. And so that experience put me in the midst of trauma every day. It put me in the
Yes.
midst of difficult moments every day. I saw people
Mm,
on their worst days,
mm,
getting the worst of news, and also in the
yes.
moments of celebration. That's what comes at a hospital. And
Hmm.
also in the very dull moments when they reflected on me about what life had meant. I
Mm,
worked the second shift. So I was there from 3 to 11 when family went home, when
yes.
staff went home, when it was me and a skeleton crew that were there. So I was hearing the talks about what life had been about.
Hmm.
And it got me really focused on the fact that what drives us as humans are really two things: the connections, the relationships we have, we draw out of what happens to us. And that's begun to be kind of the hallmark for me of what we are searching for, what we often miss. Those
Yes.
those pieces. Are we creating lives of meaning and purpose? Are we
Mhm.
focused on what's important? And are we in relationships in ways that feed and nurture us?
Well, so let's talk about thriving for just a moment, because you've often said that thriving is deeper than happiness. Can you unpack that for us? And what did you have to unlearn personally before you could teach that truth to others?
Yeah, so we have this idea at least in the United States, of the pursuit of happiness, right? And we think that that means I should be happy, and that's not what that term meant then. It was much more about having the pursuit of an intention, of a purpose. And so happiness we have reduced in this day to an emotional state that's temporary and is
Mhm.
usually by getting something, right? People are in that whatever out there will make them happy is what they're going to pursue, rather than asking the question internally, what do I need to do?
Mm.
Eudaimonia, that's eudaimonia, is what the Greeks would have talked about, of having the good life of
Yes.
meaning and purpose, and having something that's important that drives us, rather than the feeling of that, which
Mm.
is momentary. It goes away. When people are focused only on their happiness, they end up missing the deeper levels of living, because it's about
Yes.
what they can experience in that moment. It's momentary.
Wow. Actually, we have our first question from the audience. It's about thriving too. So Daniel says, Dr. Baucom, as a system architect, I focus on environmental engineering to make excellence a default rather than a choice. From your perspective, how much thriving is internal willpower versus the external infrastructure we build to support our identity? Grateful for the insight.
Yep. So yes. So let's go talk about why yes.
Yes.
I think it starts internally, of going,
Hmm.
what is that willpower going towards, right? What
Mm.
am I striving for? What am I trying to create? But then, and this is important that he named that external infrastructure, we all need
Yes.
systems in place, right? That those systems in place are what allow our desires, our decisions
Mm-hmm.
to function in the world. So if I have an internal willpower of going, I want to be in better shape, but externally I'm not doing those things to get me there. I'm not exercising, I'm not moving, I'm not
Yes.
eating well. The structures aren't in place to facilitate that. So it's not a one or the other. It's clarifying internally and then building that structure that supports that. That's, I mean,
Mm.
in many ways, how successful companies start. Somebody has an idea, it's just an
Yes.
idea. That's kind of that internal willpower. Then they have to build the pieces out here that allow that to happen. And
Yes.
the more they're able to see the systems of that, of how that fits together and either facilitates or not, that's the kind of the conclusion of that. So
Mm.
I've often said to people, tell me about the systems you have in place for what you want out of life. And they'll say, I don't have systems. And my response is, that's actually a system. It's just not an effective one for what you want. It's
Mm.
effective for what you're getting, but not what you want. And so
Yes.
when we create the systems that support our habits that can actually further what we're wanting to get to rather than just kind of the accident,
Mm-hmm.
then it fits together, both of them. They have to go hand in hand.
Well, that is quite insightful. Now, was there maybe a moment? Actually, you mentioned earlier, like me, it looks like you probably had a health scare a few years ago, and you feel like every day you live today is a bonus day, and you are so grateful to still be in the land of the living. But was there maybe a moment, or a failure, or a crisis, or a health scare that fundamentally changed how you lead yourself and others? You willing to talk
Indeed.
about it?
Yeah, sure. I try not to talk about the diagnosis of what I had because
Hmm.
others who have that diagnosis don't have the option or the opportunity for healing that I had.
Yes.
I got fortunate. I was
Mm.
sicker than usual for this, but it was the acute version, not the chronic version, and that is
Mm.
what made the difference. So when I was in my 30s, I was studying thriving. I was talking about thriving. I was writing about thriving. I was not thriving. And so
Mm.
there was an incongruency between what I was studying, what I was writing about. The Thrive Principles is one of the things that came after that. But
Mhm.
I was studying all of that and taking all of that in, but I wasn't taking care of myself. And we are the biggest, the only tool we really have to get through life is this
Yes.
body we've got that we're in. And so I wasn't taking care of it. I caught a little virus, and that little virus created a firestorm in my body, an
Mm.
autoimmune issue, and outlook was not good. And so I'm here. I recovered, but they didn't think I would.
Wow.
So because of that, I started labeling everything after that kind of um, that's the bonus time that I talked about.
Mhm.
And I switched things up, and here's what I realized. It was not the scare that made everything switch. That was the ignition switch, though. So,
Mhm.
I had always wanted to scuba dive, and so as I was recovering, my wife said, "You can't keep putting this off." And so
Yeah.
she bought me scuba lessons for my birthday, and so I went to scuba class. And the instructor who became my mentor in my pursuit of being a scuba instructor,
Wow.
and dive buddy did that too. Just another little
Amazing.
little thing. They had this first thing where you had to do a little swim test, and
Mhm.
I thought I was actually doing a swim test. I realized later that they were just looking to see who they had to worry about. But I'm
Huh.
stubborn, right? I'm very stubborn, and so I finished the test, but it exhausted me. Yeah, so there I am on
Yeah.
the paddleboard. I do that too. I finished the test. I dragged myself out of the pool, and he's standing beside me. I looked up and I said, "Okay, Ray, if your point was I need to be in better shape to do this, I got it." And he smiled at me. He didn't say no or yes. He smiled at me.
Yes.
The next day, I started going to the gym.
Mm.
And going to the gym begun to be a linchpin for everything else. I
Yes.
went to the gym. I started lifting a few weights just in that little room they had off to the side for people who weren't weightlifters. And so it
Hmm.
was a great setup, right? I wasn't overwhelmed with everything. And I kept doing that. And I started going, wait, if I'm not nourishing my body the right way, if I'm still eating the bad stuff I was eating before, I'm just
Yes.
negating the hard work I'm putting in. And so I changed how I was eating.
Wow.
And then I was going, wait, if I'm doing that and then I'm not sleeping well, I'm not recharging my body. So I started watching that. And I'm like, if I'm doing
Mm.
all of that and I'm still stressed out, I'm not
Yes.
dealing with that. And so piece by piece, it began to fit together.
Wow.
That's not the only way that people do it, but that's the
Hmm.
domino of having those systems in place.
Yes.
And so that to me was I've
Mm.
got to just not just learn about thriving, but I've got to apply it to myself. How do I
Wow.
learn to thrive?
Wow. That is really, really powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, what would you say you've learned through all those experiences?
That the bigger, deeper, so the two things, I'll return to this because I think it's so important. The two things, and I'll go take this all the way back to when I was that chaplain.
Mm.
The two things that we're left with when everything's stripped away, you're left with the relationships you have
Yes.
and what meant things to you and what purpose you had in the world, the meaning and purpose
Mm.
and those relationships. They are the ones that drive our sense of being in the world.
Yes.
So David Brooks has talked about us having the eulogy resume versus the work resume. And
Hmm.
that eulogy resume is often about what really was important to us.
Yes.
Um, that one's my daughter. The one before was my wife,
Yeah.
and this is just in a little award ceremony. But those moments of connection are what are fundamental to us. It's a basic human need for us to have
Mm.
these connections, which is why I focus on getting the marriages to where they can be, if possible. And
Yes.
if not, solving the issues behind us, and that is my sweet wife.
Yes.
So that's the focus there. But then ask the question,
Hmm.
what am I here for? How do I leave the world better than I found it? My belief is if
Wow.
we were all taking that on, the legacies we would leave behind, and I don't mean
Yes.
somebody remembering the person, but the legacy that lives on.
Yes.
That to me is the focus.
Wow, that is quite powerful. So let's talk a little bit about connecting relationship mastery then to leadership under pressure. So one of your core messages is that change can begin with one person, even when others resist. How does that principle apply to leading to leaders who are facing disengaged teams or resistant cultures?
Yeah, so I always ask the question of where else can you start, right? I mean, if you're not working on what you can control, you're going to be trying to control what you can't.
Yes.
So I can't make somebody on my team do something. I can model where we need to go, and I can say, this isn't working. What are we going to do about it, right? There's some ways, but especially if you're in a leadership position, to be able to say we need a change. That's what
Hmm.
leaders often have to do. But in terms of starting the process, there is only one place we can start, and that is with ourselves and asking the question, how am I in the way? So, one of the things I've noticed about competent leadership is they're able to say, I'm responsible for this,
Yes.
not I blame you. And then when things are going well, to say, it is my team who is bringing this alone, right? They
Hmm.
share the spotlight, but they're
Yes.
willing to say, I am responsible for where things are at this moment. Those two
Hmm.
pieces together. What I think is a failure is a leadership that says the fault is there, and
Yes.
I alone am the one that is about success. That is never the case.
Hmm.
And so we have to turn that around and say leadership is about saying my place of change, right? I can
Yes.
change where I am and how I approach the relationships in the team. And that begins to transform others. There really are only three things that we have
Hmm.
control over.
Wow. Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, we can. So it's the three A's that we can control: our aspirations, our attitude, and our actions. That's
Wow.
it. So our aspirations are, what do we want to head towards? Now, I can't control somebody else's aspirations. That's not possible. I can control what I want to head towards. I can
Mm,
control that piece. I can't control the fears because our brain is manufacturing those fears. I can control how much energy I put into it,
yes.
but not whether the fears pop up. So we can control our aspirations, my own. I can control my attitude. And I don't mean like, do I have a positive attitude, but my attitude like direction. Do I say, I give up on this, or do I
Mm,
say, I will figure this out? Those are the two big ones. And
yes.
both can be the right choice. Either one can fit. So
Mm,
somebody in a business where that business cannot move forward may need to say, I give up. I'm
yes.
walking away from this and I'll try something else. So that could fit there. But what I often see is people defaulting to that rather than asking, how can I figure this out? That's the
Mm,
growth mindset.
yes.
Carol Dweck talks about that growth mindset. And the question of growth mindset is, given where we are, what's possible? I can
Yes.
choose to say, I'll figure this out. The last thing I can control are my actions, what I say, what I don't say, what I do, what I don't do. Now,
Mm,
notice if that is what I have to control, I can't control that in other people. And we spend
mm,
a lot of time trying to control other people's aspirations, attitude, and
yes.
actions when we can't, rather than focusing on our own.
Well, I believe that's worth the price of admission, sir. I've been married for almost 25 years now. We got married in July 2001. I can't believe it. But uh, especially in marriage, it seems like sometimes people want to be right and blame. And I figured pretty early that if I was going to do that, I was not going to be married for very long. So I'd rather be happy and not be right. But I guess the question I have for you
So let
is,
me change that for you. It's not
yes,
really be happy and not be right. It's if your insistence on being right is on being right, you're
mhm,
not going to be happy,
happy.
right?
Yes, that's a better
That
way.
doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that if your focus is on being right, you're there to win, to prove
Mhm.
your point, and that destroys the possibility of happiness together.
Wow, powerful. Yeah, it takes a therapist to say it right. But really, the question I have for you, sir, in both
Mhm.
marriage, but I think it applies to leadership as well. People often default to blame, right? That seems to be the case. What does taking responsibility without self blame actually look like in practice?
So one of the I do think it's important sometimes to analyze what went wrong, right? But one of the things, here's my analogy.
Mhm.
You're in the house and the house is on fire. Is that the right time to be going, who set this fire? Why
No.
is this fire burning? So it's not. It's what can we do here? How can we
Mhm.
get out? So Jack Canfield, colleague, talks about the fact that responsibility is the ability to respond.
Yes.
And that is often about, that's there's Jack, and that's often about moving forward,
Mm.
not trying to figure out what was wrong. There's importance of analyzing what could be done differently, but the more important
Yes.
thing is where do we want to go? And that's true. So when I was in the therapy office, I would watch couples come in and start pointing the finger, right? And one would say, well, you did this. And the other would say, well,
Mm.
you did this. And I'm pretty sure they would track it back all the way until
Yes.
when they first met, if they were allowed to. And that never gave a path
Mm.
forward. It's kind of like if you decide to go on a trip and you're going to drive by looking in the rearview mirror rather than looking
Yes.
at the road in front of you. It's not going to go very well.
Hmm. That that is quite insightful. So Daniel is asking again, Dr. Baucom, having seen life at its edge in the hospital, how do we engineer a relationship infrastructure that stays focused on what matters when the pressure of 2026 tries to pull us apart? That's probably the experience of many people listening right now.
Yeah. And it's a great question because one of the things that some people think I'm saying is you've got to spend 100% of your energy on the relationship. That's not it. So let's back
Mhm.
up a minute to why marriages get into trouble. It is not the external things. In fact, marriage can be the buffer for dealing with all the life things.
Hmm.
The reason is because the pause button in their relationship. And we hit the pause button because we think we've got this, right? So we'll track back one step further. Couple falls in love, they spend all of the, when couples are falling in love, they're spending all of their energy focused on each other and
Yes.
all they can do to be with each other and broaden that out. And at some point they say, hey, let's get married. What's interesting to me about that is people saying, hey, let's get married. And it's not that people don't know the statistics on marriage survival, right? I mean, we're all going
Yeah.
thumb,
Okay.
toss the coin is kind of what the statistics are. Let's do this. Let's sign up.
Yes.
And the reason is because they think they've built a relationship, a love that will beat that. And the problem is they don't recognize that feeling they have will shift. And part of what shifts it is because they kind of get back to life. I'll put that in quotes because they're actually missing the opportunity here. So they hit the pause button going, we'll get back to us when the kids are named the stage, because it's a creeping thing, right? They'll go like, okay, we've got kids, now we got to be parents. When they're out of diapers, we'll get back to us. When
Yes.
they're in school, we'll get back to us. When they're in high school, when they're in when they're out of college, when and on it goes, right?
Yes.
Or when my career is here, and they get close to that and they go, well, when my career is here, well, when my career is here, and so they get into a pattern. So back to that systems piece, they get into a pattern. Their system they have built is about being paused, about not spending time on their relationship. They're spending time on everything else going on.
Wow.
And when they do that, they remove the connection between them that is what nurtures a relationship. So when they pause that, they often confuse what they're doing. So years ago, I remember I said to a couple, hey, y'all are so disconnected, don't spend any time together. I want you to do one thing this week. I want you to go to dinner together without the kids. And they came back the next week and I said, how'd it go? And they said, oh, we talked the whole time. And I said, what'd you talk about? Well, we talked about the kids and we talked about what stuff we need to do around the house. And all of it was routines of life and talking about these other things. I said, anything about the two of you, where each of you have your dreams, your hopes, what's important to you? That's what I want you to talk about, because that's what's not happening. That's what got paused. And so when couples pause their relationship, they're creating a disconnection habit.
Wow.
Rather than intentionally setting up habits of connection. And that's what we need to kind of focus on. So that structuring is going, what is important to me? So when people look at what their priorities are, a marriage is often one or two in what they say.
Yes.
It's where you look at where they spend the time and you see it's way down the list. Where you spend your energy and your time reveals your actual priorities, not what you claim to be. And you can rearrange those. But you've got to rearrange the other blocks of that, right? You've got these blocks that are around you, and you're like, wherever you spend your energy. And the problem is sometimes those blocks compete with each other. And then we've got to say, which one is going to carry, right? Which one are we going to stack higher? And if it's our relationship, then we spend time nurturing that. We give our energy to that rather than wherever else. I've noticed that many times when people are out together, I'll look at a couple and they're both doing this.
Yes.
And that's fine sometimes, as long as they have built in the places where they do connect, that they have the connection. And this isn't the way to avoid connection, which it often is for couples. So when they hit the pause button saying, hey, we need to get to us, is the start of that. And then to ask, how do we want to do that? What are the pieces we want to do? How do we want to reconnect? Generally, though, one person starts that process, because one person, it's always, the science fiction movies, they put them in the spaceship that's going to some distant place, and they put them in suspended animation, fly off, and then they awaken wherever they are, and it's just like they came back to life. That's what people kind of think is going to happen. Now, if you take most of those movies, what happens at some point is there is a malfunction and somebody wakes up and then there's a crisis. And that's what happens also in the relationship. Somebody says, wait a minute, this is not what I want. I don't like what I have. And they may say to the spouse, hey, we need to reconnect. And the spouse is still dozing, still in suspended animation. They may say, hey, we need to reconnect. And that spouse is already thinking of another place of connection. And I don't mean just an affair. It could be somebody else, but it could be investing overly in a job or kids or hobbies or friends or anywhere else. Instead of saying that our primary relationship in this house is the marriage. So that's the beginning point of building those out.
Now, I've doing the research for this podcast. I've seen a lot of your work where you ask, can you save your marriage alone? That's quite an interesting question. No, I guess just give us the summary of that, because that's quite intriguing.
Can you finish the process? No. Can you start the process?
Yes.
Yes. So many times I'll be with somebody and they're going, it takes two to tango. And my response is, you're already dancing. The question is whether you want to change your steps that you're in, or whether you just want to keep on with this dance where you're dancing apart. How do you want to change that? And one person can change their steps. Now, that's my whole thing is, can you start the process? So if you say it's not where it needs to be, I am going to do what I can to change that.
Yes.
That begins a process instead of going, well, there's nothing I can do. They're not interested. And so then I have people who come to me and say, okay, if you can guarantee me 100% that I can save my marriage, I'll do whatever you tell me.
Yes.
And my response is, I can reverse that for you. If you don't put in the effort, I can guarantee what comes out of that, because you're already on that trajectory, right? So the only way of figuring out what's possible is by taking action, by trying. And that is what often makes the difference, to the surprise of usually both people.
Wow. That is very insightful. Thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom in just the short amount of time we have here. That's incredible. Let's talk about emotional discipline for just a moment. You've emphasized emotional strength over emotional reactivity in your work. One question I have for you is, how can leaders build emotional resilience before crisis hits, rather than trying to develop it mid-storm?
So we build those muscles throughout our life. And unfortunately, a lot of times people have avoided it until it's something big. And that even starts in how we parent our kids. Can we allow our kids to struggle through things that when they don't matter, rather than when they hit the big things? So this is a parenting question too. But if we don't take on the small things and say, hey, that was my role, that was my bad, then we have a harder time when it's a bigger thing and we're dealing with that. Because if we don't learn that young, our immediate knee-jerk reaction is always going to be, it's out there. The problem is out there. This is not me. And part of resilience is being able to say, what do I do from here, right? What is the role I can take from here? And that starts with the small things. If you're hit with the big things, it's just a higher climb. It's a tougher climb. It doesn't mean you can't do it then. It just means there's a bigger shift that happens. Whenever I get home and I get through it, I'm going, okay, I've got some more strength here now that I didn't have before. And sometimes I'm like, where is that going to come out later? What's coming down the road that I need to be prepared for? But the fact is, there are going to be things down the road that we got to be prepared for. Life is just going to be tough sometimes. So the small things build to the bigger things. You may kind of raise the military kind of question, and isn't that kind of the thing? As you start in lowly, where you have no say so, and then they give you a little more and a little more and a little more and a little more, and you're building up your skills of choice and your skills of responding based on that, based in the live action. So the other thing that military doesn't do is they don't put you in front of harm's way until they've gone through the simulation of that, so you have some muscle memory on how to deal with that, right? That's first responders are
Mm-hmm.
always trained on simulations first because our brain kind of kicks in
Yeah.
out of gear unless we have the muscle memory.
Yeah.
So you showed a picture of me in jujitsu.
Yes.
Same thing, right? Jujitsu is training you in a calm
Mm-hmm.
environment. And there it is. And in case you're in a bad
Yeah.
situation, your muscle memory is able to kick in. And so we would go through repetition after
Yeah.
repetition and in doing it in ways that simulated what would happen.
Mm.
Now, I don't think many of us in that class were hoping to have a fight. There are a few, I think, but we were still doing the same thing,
Yes.
prepping for when we responded on muscle memory.
Mm.
And the muscle memory is true for also our values. If we are used to responding without our value base, when a big thing comes along,
Yes.
we're going to respond without our value base.
Mm.
If we make choices and small things along the way based on our values are the structures we rely on when it gets time for that.
Yeah, I guess throughout my Navy career, one thing we definitely do is we train like we fight. This way, when the real fight comes, we've already prepared. We've gone through this, hundreds of time, and it's kind of like muscle memory. So we've highlighted some of your work in the Thrive Principle book. One more question I want to ask, and it's mostly, I guess I am in two worlds right now: the military and cyber security. I take both of them very, very stressful. It's almost as if the switch never
Hmm.
fully turn off. So the question I have for you is, maybe for people who are in the military or in high tech who really operates in environment of ambiguity and sometimes fatigue and moral pressure, what does thriving really look like in environment where the stress never really fully turn off?
Yeah, so part of my thing is if we're not able to kind of step away from that at times and refresh, we're not going to thrive in that.
Mm,
If we're constantly, if we've lost the ways of doing self-care, even in the moment, like deep breaths, right? That I
yes.
mean, sometimes a micro adjustment, sometimes in the middle. So let's go back to a marriage session where both couples are stressed out in that moment, and I could just say,
Mm,
hey, let's just practice that breathing, right? Some deep breathing. How long does that take to take a few deep breaths just to settle your automatic response system down a little bit so your adrenaline is not flowing? Those are some techniques that are out there already, and so that's an important piece. Another
mm-hmm.
important piece that we've hinted at is um, both of those careers are often tied to minutia of things, like you're doing these little things and
Yeah.
you forget the bigger reason you're there.
Mm,
So if somebody is in cybersecurity and they're having to do little coding and these
yes.
minutia, they can get caught up in that and miss the fact that there's a purpose for that.
Mm,
They're trying to keep something from happening. I
yes.
spent a lot of time doing coaching and therapy with pilots, and it was the same thing. They would often come in and say, I'm just a glorified bus driver. I'm like, you're not. You're delivering souls from one place to another, and those souls have a
Mm,
purpose. Some of them are going to weddings or funerals. Some of them are going to new jobs or new
yeah.
opportunities, and you're transporting them from one place to another.
Mm,
That's a purpose. And if you
yes.
lose track of that because you're having to just mess with the dials, and a lot of the time there's nothing going on, they would often
Mm-hmm.
tell me it's the same thing soldiers feel, and probably cybersecurity, that
Yeah.
it's days of monotony with moments of terror.
Mm-hmm.
And so the same kind of thing, but when they lose track of why did they
Mm,
get into this and what
purpose.
is the purpose behind it, it's easy for those pieces to wear them down. If they're coming in every
Wow.
day going, I've got a mission, I know what my
Yes.
mission is, the minutia of what I do furthers that mission.
Hmm.
That's what drives it along.
Wow. So many insights. Thank you so much. Let's talk about your other book, Forgiveness Process, a little book on forgiving and letting go. I think some people have a lot of misunderstanding about that. So it's a theme in your work, and I think it's often misunderstood. What does forgiveness not mean for leaders, and why is it essential for integrity?
So forgiveness is not letting the person off the hook.
Mm,
In fact, a lot of times the other person doesn't even know that something's got you, right?
yes.
They're off somewhere else or died or whatever. They're not even there, but you're holding on to it.
Mm,
Forgiveness is not that. Forgiveness is not a process of forgive and forget. I don't know how many times people say, I know I'm supposed to forgive and forget. And I'm like, no,
Yes.
you're not. If you can forget something, it's not a big thing for you to forgive. The
Mm,
big things in life are the ones that need forgiveness. And so I tie two things together because what often comes out of our childhood is you have to forgive. There's a mandate.
mm-hmm.
I talk about this in the book, my brother and me, face to face after having another scuffle, and my father saying, you have to apologize, say you're
Mm-hmm.
sorry. I'm
Yes.
sorry. And the other person going, I forgive you. We
Yeah.
weren't feeling it. We
Mm-hmm.
had to do that. That's not the same as getting to do that because I don't
Mm,
want to carry this around. That's what we do when we don't forgive. We keep carrying it around. Now, can we learn lessons from all that? Sure. But lessons is not the same as controlling me. It's not the same as
mm.
holding me back. So when we don't forgive, I think of it as putting a rock in the backpack and carrying that
Yes.
backpack, and it gets pretty heavy. It's
Mm-hmm.
not affecting the other person. You're the one dragging that around. The question is, what
Yes.
does it take to let that backpack fall? And that's what the
Mm.
forgive process is about.
Wow, that's really, really powerful. Really, everything you teach, it definitely works within the confine of a marriage relationship, but I believe also with teams and organization and just people. It's really, really powerful. Thanks so much for sharing that. So we have about 15 minutes left. Let me get into our last segment where I try to get into your head and see, all of the leadership lessons and principles that you've learned that have really helped you be as successful as you are today and maybe inspire my audience. So first question I have for you then is, what do you think is the greatest lesson you have ever learned, just in life, in leadership in general?
It's all about that sense of purpose. If I have a sense of
Mm,
purpose, Viktor Frankl talked about if you have he talked about having a meaning. If you have a
yes.
why, you can go through any what, right? You can go through anything. And
Hmm.
sometimes people think it's just finding meaning in something because that's kind of what Frankl talks about. I think it's
Yes.
broader of having your purpose, finding what it is. So if you can find what you're here to do,
Mm,
that's the mission, right? That's the mission. And that's true in relationships too. So if my purpose is building a strong relationship, that I can reverse engineer that, right? I can
yes.
ask the question, how can I back up and get to that point? What does it take?
Hmm.
And so a purpose is always a good starting point. When somebody comes to me for coaching, I'm asking, what is it that you want? Where are you trying
Yes.
to get to? And I think that's a powerful question for us to
Mm,
ponder because your purpose can change too. And that's another piece that I frequently tell people is you've got to have an experimenter's mindset. I don't have to say a purpose when I am 12 because
mm,
I would probably be, I don't know what would I be, probably I'd still be a magician, I guess, when I was 12.
yes.
But that outgrew that at some point. And whatever I thought when I was in my 20s, because I've transformed several times what I thought I would be doing, that's okay. Each time I had a purpose. It's just that our
Yes.
purpose changes as life comes along. So having a purpose, not a
Mm,
purpose that drives you from cradle to grave, but a purpose each point of life is important. And that
yes.
purpose drives what meaning you take from it. It also drives how you do relationships. It drives how you do leadership.
Mm,
It drives how you do everything in life just because that
yes.
purpose is what drives us.
Wow, that is really, really powerful. So let me ask you this. When we look at your life and your work, right, you've been extremely successful. Looks like you were a magician, a chaplain, a therapist, and now I believe I'm like a number one marriage coach and in academia as well. So what do you think is the secret of your success? Why are you so successful?
Curiosity and stubbornness.
Yes.
So
Uh,
I was fortunate that my parents nurtured my. I'm a natural curious person,
mm-hmm.
and I rarely so scuba diving. I took diving lessons, and probably after about 4 or 5 months of that, I turned to Ray and said, "Hey, how do you become an
Wow.
instructor? What's the piece?" So it wasn't ever enough. It wasn't enough for me to go, "Oh, I like to do a
Yes.
few magic tricks." It was like, "Can I get on stage and do
Mm-hmm.
magic?" And so I have a curiosity that is often an encompassing curiosity.
Wow.
And so I'll start with something and I'll chase it down until I have it into what I think is a direct and simple kind of thing. That's helped in
Yes.
the writing to simplify. But I'm also a very stubborn person.
Hmm.
I'm dyslexic, so school was not super easy for me. Reading, I mean, here I've written a bunch of books, and I don't
Yes.
like to read. I read it because there's a purpose to it. I don't
Mm.
I don't like to read novels because I get no enjoyment. I listen to novels,
Really?
but
Okay,
I'm a
that's
very
surprising.
yeah. Well, I watch my wife, right, and she loves to read. She gets
Yes.
enjoyment out of it. I read, and I'm like, ugh, I have to read. And so
Wow.
if somebody says, "Here's a novel," I'm like, "Oh, I have to do that," or I could listen to it and let
Hmm.
somebody read it to me. That's great.
Yes.
I read because I need to. So there, you can see the books behind, and this
Hmm.
is just a fraction of what when we
Yes.
moved, I got rid of thousands of books,
Yeah.
and it wasn't because I love to read. It was because I need to read. And
Mm.
so my stubbornness came out of that experience of having to figure my way through that.
Wow.
And so when I was at some point, many people have said to me, in fact, you must be really smart to get a PhD. I'm like, just really stubborn. I just stick with the process.
Yes.
And so the same has been true with success. I'll keep pushing. Now, that doesn't mean I don't
Mm.
change. I'm also capable because of the curiosity of going, I wonder how this is working.
Mm.
This stubbornness can get in the way,
Yes.
or I can say, you know what, this isn't working this way. Let me pivot here. And I'll be stubborn in that direction
Mm.
too. So it's just kind of a process of curiosity and stubbornness that
Wow.
keeps me going.
Quite insightful. So, Dr. Baucom, what are you learning now?
So I have spent a lot of time working with authors lately, and so I'm really learning more about the kind of what's going on with authors when they get that book.
Mhm.
One of my favorite questions: what are you going to do with that book?
Mm.
And what surprises me is people going, "What do you mean I wrote a book?" I mean, that's, that. And so my process now is to focus on helping them follow a path. I built a business off of a book, and that is where I spend my time. In fact, just started a new podcast just because I wanted to be thinking about that. Right. So
Mhm.
I still am constantly trying to learn about
Man,
how people thrive. I'm a big learner for life. If you're not
yes.
learning, Ray Kroc's quote, "You're either
Mhm.
green and growing or ripe and rotting."
Yes.
That's kind of my motto. Can I keep on
Wow.
being green, right? Can I keep on taking it in? So I keep learning about relationships and study what's coming out in research about thriving, and also how authors can capitalize on the
Mhm.
message that they have for the world.
Wow, that is really wonderful. So, what about failure? How has failure shaped your life?
I think of, let me say, at my better moments, when you have a failure, it stings. But
Mhm.
in reality, failure is feedback, it's information. And how we use that, how we take that in is the important thing. We all have things. And this is where humans are ashamed of the reality of what is. The
Yes.
fact is, if you're alive, you're going to have failures. I always think back. This is kind of the image I have. My kids, when they were just starting to walk, they fell repeatedly.
Mhm.
And not once did I have a child say, "Well, I can't seem to do that, so I'm going to quit."
Yes.
They kept doing it and found better ways, found
Mhm.
what would hold them up. And then they started running. I mean, it's the nature of life for us to take difficult moments
Mm.
and move forward until we start feeling ashamed of what's not working.
Wow.
And we say, well, I am a failure rather than, well, that failed. What now? What can we
Yes.
do from here? That's information for me.
Mm.
So if I can take the failure and transform it into information, then I
Yes.
can take the next step of growing and find a different way forward.
Wow, failing forward. So powerful. All right. Uh, if you could choose three people to have dinner with, they could be alive, dead, or even mythical figures, who would you choose and why?
So Viktor Frankl would probably be number one on my list, right? And
Yeah.
uh, I, Jack Canfield, I've had dinner with him, but that would be
Yeah.
another one. Yeah, that's a great book. And if I would probably choose my grandfather as the third. He died when I was 12, almost 13, and yet he was a big influence on my life because he was just unconditionally loving towards me.
Wow. And you've written so many books. So already when it comes to books, I want my listener to definitely get Five Principles. But I think The Forgiveness One is a great book as well. But also The Immutable Laws of Living. Wow. It's really wonderful. Now, let's talk about the book that is not yours. So you mentioned Viktor Frankl a couple of times. Man's Search for Meaning. What do you think my audience should read this one?
So if there is a challenge to somebody's a belief system, I would say a concentration camp would be it. And
Hmm.
so what people think is that he wrote the book because he was in a concentration camp. The reality is he had already decided that the central thing in life was having a meaning and purpose. He
Mm,
was writing the book. Now, he was writing the book that never made it because
yes.
the guards ripped it up in front of him. They pulled it out of his pocket and ripped it up in front of him. So what came out of that was tested in that experience.
Mm,
If you can make it through that experience and have a sense of what purpose is instead of losing all sense of meaning and purpose, if you can come
yes.
through that, you probably have put your finger on something pretty important. And he talked about the people who survived that experience.
Hmm.
And without exception, the people who survived that experience were the ones that had some sense of meaning in their life. The ones who they didn't necessarily, they weren't the healthiest, but they had a sense of purpose in how they were moving forward.
Mm. That's powerful. So you mentioned Jack Canfield is one of my mentors as well, co-author of Chicken for the Soul. But there's also this number one New York Times best-selling book, The Success Principles. I
Great
really
book.
love this book. Why should people follow the work of Jack Canfield?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things from that book, in fact, is his equation.
Yeah.
E plus R equals O, right?
Yes.
The event plus your response equals outcome. Now, there are two
Mhm.
mistakes that people make on this. One is that they think any event that's coming at them, that is going to shape their life. The
Yes.
others are the ones who think that they are the sole creators of their life. That's
Mhm.
so it's the event, what's external to you, your response, that's the R, equals the outcome.
Yep.
And to hold those in tension, I get to choose my response
Mm.
to what's going on around me, and that leads to the outcome. And so what he says is if you're not getting the outcome you want, you
Mhm.
don't control the events that come to you. You only
Yes.
control the response to that.
Yeah.
So that equation in itself is worth the book.
Yeah, it's so simple, but doesn't mean that it is easy. But yeah, it makes perfect sense. Wow, powerful. So let me ask you: we have about five minutes left. If you had one and only one day to live, what would you have liked your final contribution to be?
Oh gosh, final contribution. So people have asked me, like, do you want a bestseller? I'm like, I've always thought it'd be fun to be in an airport and look over and see my book in someone's hand, right? But in reality, names fade. We have
Mm,
this illusion that we're going to leave a stamp on the world, that our name is going to outlast us. It doesn't. I mean, I'm with people that go by some building that's named after someone, and their question is, who is that? It doesn't
mm,
matter anymore. But
yeah.
the legacies we leave behind and the lessons that we teach our kids, people around us. So in
Mm,
reality, I mean, that's my thing, is wanting to leave a legacy of people saying, how can I live a more thriving life and have more thriving relationships? It's not about me at that point. It's about
mm,
what legacy we leave behind.
powerful. And if you had a magic wand and you could solve any problem at all, what is one problem you'd like to solve first thing tomorrow morning?
Uh, I mean, I'd go with, world hunger and conflict, but
Yes.
this is the big one. I think it would be that people get stuck into two things: self-blame that holds them down, and blaming others that holds
Mhm.
them down. Those two things, if we could
Yes.
reverse that and ask the question, what do I do here and how do I accept responsibility? That would solve probably hunger
Wow.
and conflict anyway.
Yes. All right. We are getting toward the end of the podcast. What can my audience do to provide value back to you?
Yep. So, I always love to hear from people about what they get out of my book. So that's
Mhm.
great. Grabbing a book is great. You can listen to my podcast. I've got the Thriveology Podcast at thriveologypodcast.com, or the Save the Marriage Podcast at savethemarriagepodcast.com, or the one you've got out is my latest one. That's the Book to Business Blueprint at
Mhm.
booktobusinessblueprint.com. That is specifically for authors who are asking the question, how do I take this message to a bigger place?
Yes.
Just started that new podcast. It's after the book, to talk about my experiences and what I've learned from that process. But there's a whole lot more material there to help them.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. So many resources. I think your legacy should be, I guess, settled now, because you definitely have a lot of great material that's really going to help a lot of people. So let me ask you this: if you could go back and give a piece of advice to your 17-year-old self, standing
Yeah.
at the edge of this incredible career you've had, what would you say to 17-year-old Lee?
Be okay with who you are, because that's what matters. I was not the popular kid. I was the nerdy kid. A little secret, I started the magic club at my high school. And if you want to be nerdy, start a magic club at high school. So, and even then, I knew that wasn't going to make me popular. I didn't worry about that. But
Yes.
to be secure that one day that's not going to matter much,
Mm.
that's the big piece for that 17-year-old. Yeah.
Be okay with who you are. That is powerful. Okay, to end, it's gonna take less than a minute and a half. We're gonna do a lightning round, rapid fire. So don't take too long to think. Whatever comes to your mind, I want to hear it. One word that defines great leadership. One word.
Resilience,
Okay, morning routine or practice that keeps you grounded.
gratitude.
Book or quote that changed your life.
Um, Man's Search for Meaning. We'll go with
Yeah,
that.
I thought so. So who inspired you most today?
Um, God, truthfully, probably my parents and my wife.
Yes. All right. A leadership habit you refuse to compromise on.
Values, driven from values.
Okay. The question every leader should ask themselves frequently.
What are my priorities that I actually am living out? How am I living them out? And do they match what I say they are?
So, what did you want to be when you were a kid?
A magician. It depends on when you ask me, but probably the big one that I actually activated was being a magician. Did that for a number of years.
Wow. So, you actually did what you were planning to do. Very good. 3 adjective describing you as a kid.
Stubborn, curious, and pretty affectionate.
Okay. As an adult.
That hadn't changed.
Wow. Cool. All right. So, I like to live on a high note. So, what is something you are feeling optimistic about?
Um, I watch people learn every day and try to better themselves, and I'm optimistic in the future of people. Moments scare me, but overall, the arch of history always shows the power of humans.
Wow. And for those who recently got married, no, like you say, they are thinking they've built that relationship and they are going to beat the odd. What is your number one advice for them,
Be a team.
dear Tim? Wow. Okay, this is it. The last question I have for you, sir, is what is one word that represents our shared experience on this podcast today? And thanks again for your time.
Oh, it's been a great. It's been a blast. I always love to have that. So great. That's the word.
Thank you so much. I am always very, very
Thank you.
grateful. That's Dr. Lee Baucom, everyone. Thank you so much, sir. Bye.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay. This podcast is one for the book. So I really hope this adds a lot of value to you. And I know we talked about marriage, but it does apply, I believe, organization, teams, and just life in general. And I'm hoping these leadership principles are going to help you become better leader and also have a greater impact. So I want to remind you guys that I'm going to be back here tomorrow, Saturday. We're going to be studying the book of Proverbs, ancient wisdom, mentoring from the book of Proverbs. This is not religious. It's just going to an ancient scroll and really looking for ancient wisdom and leadership lesson. So we're going to be doing it throughout the month of January. Tomorrow is the 17th, so we're going to do Proverbs 17 tomorrow, and we're going to end at the end of January 31st. Again, it's something I used to do when I was a teenager, I think 12, 13 years old, every year I would go through the book of Proverbs in January. And when I got married, I did it with my wife. So this is the first time I'm doing this publicly on the podcast. I hope you can join me. And then on Sunday, I will have the great pleasure of speaking with Major Chris Slininger, U.S. Army. He's a mentorship-driven change agent, and we're going to be talking about his life experience, his story from Eagle Scout to field grade officer in the most powerful army in the world. And this book, A Man's Search for Meaning, has been recommended at least 12 times since last year alone. It's one of the most recommended books, so I highly recommend that you all get this. And I want you to also get a copy of Thrive Principle and also Forgiveness. I think that is so important, but people don't think it's that important, but it can definitely change your life. And then the immutable laws of living and many other resources and books and programs that Dr. Lee Baucom has available to improve your life. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and we're going to see you tomorrow. And I am very, very glad that you were here with me for this special edition of the Leadership and Success Podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leadership and Success Podcast with your host, Coach BZ. If today's episode added value to your leadership journey, be sure to subscribe, share, and join us again for more wisdom nuggets on how to lead better and achieve greater success. Remember, leadership is the most critical skill of our time. The world will always need leaders to inspire others, drive innovation, and execute meaningful strategy. So why not count yourself among the bold leaders shaping the 21st century? Until next time, stay inspired, stay committed, and keep leading with excellence.